Hello and welcome to the Wealthy Wellbeing Podcast, where we talk about all things health, fitness, real estate, and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Zach Bush, and today I have a friend of mine, Jerry. Jerry, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so we went back and forth trying to get this scheduled. I know I was going through a move, you were going through a move. You have a toddler, I have a toddler. Life is hectic, so I definitely appreciate making the time. But I've known you for a few years now, and why don't you give your background to everybody that's listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jerry. Zach said we've known each other for a few years now. I actually relocated to Pennsylvania from Ohio about 10 years ago now, and actually met Zach through CrossFit. Which is we'll certainly talk a little bit about my journey throughout fitness, but my career and what I've been doing is mainly in the health and fitness industry. Where we had the opportunity to start our own business about 5 years ago, Klasikfit, classic nutrition, and doing personal training and nutrition, which is something that I'm passionate about. But other than that, my hobbies really lie with being as present in my family as possible. That's probably my biggest joy right now is that with my toddler, my 18-month-old, and I got one more on the way. So that's a little bit about me. We just moved to Chalfont, Pennsylvania. So.
Awesome. No, I love that. And so you started that company with your wife, correct?
Yeah, Lauren and I started that together about 5 years ago. It actually started as Lauren Classic Fitness first. And then we ended up changing it into Klasikfit probably about 6 months in. So.
Awesome. And so you've always been passionate about health and fitness. Why don't you talk a little bit about kind of your journey, from where you were to where you are now?
Yeah, it's so I would say, it's been probably 14, 15 years ago that I walked away from playing sports competitively. So in college, I was defensive tackle, played at a small school, NAIA school, Urbana in Ohio. And it was a defensive tackle. It was about 280, 290. And from a frame perspective, just had a lot of weight to lose. And so when I walked away from the sport, I had always been into athletics. So of course you're working out, you're doing those things, but you're never really educated in nutrition. And so when I stepped away, I knew, I wanted to make a change for myself, just live healthier, feel better within my own skin. And so went through my own transformation. Initially lost like over 100 pounds and did it probably, in some of the most unhealthy ways you can imagine, from, different types of, eating disorders and whatever, so really went through that. And on the outside of that, that's where I really gained my interest and wanted to study, in the health science field, and went down the exercise science, kinesiology role. Thought I wanted to be a physical therapist, and then ended up getting a personal training cert and decided that, being in a clinic really wasn't for me. And so I started my career in healthcare staffing and recruiting. And then, really just kept that as a passion hobby. And, through that, I've always just tried to maintain the healthiest lifestyle that I can, and for me and for my family, and worked with clients independently until it all culminated into Klasikfit 5 years ago. So.
I love that. So were you keeping that weight on for football? Like, was that kind of the goals? Like, hey, let's keep this on. I know like offensive linemen, defensive linemen, they typically purposefully kind of run themselves a little bit heavier, right? I mean, obviously the more you weigh, the harder you are to move. Is that something that you purposefully did through your time playing football?
That's a great question. So initially, right, like as a kid, and being overweight as a kid was not the goal, right? So I think, you're big, and then you want to play football, and they just kind of start putting you into positions. And so I think it became a part of my identity for a while. And so, yeah, I think, that was always like, I'm going to keep my weight up because I play football and this is my thing. And then obviously, any athlete, I know you played, soccer and sports competitively too. So it's like, you have that as your identity. And then when you step away from it, you're trying to rebrand or identify yourself. And so I think that was part of, letting go of that part of myself and saying like, this is unnecessary. But I also, growing up, I grew up in a really small town in Zanesville, Ohio. And I think people there are just very uneducated, when it comes to nutrition and lack of resources, healthy eating options nearby. So I think a part of it being a part of my identity, and then also just not knowing any better for the longest part of until I got into college. So.
Yeah, it's something that's definitely not highlighted in high school. I mean, I kind of stumbled across, nutrition and stuff like that
Yeah.
through my mom in high
Yeah.
school, but it wasn't anything organized. It was just like facts here and there, kind of stuff thrown at you. I mean, you always
Yeah.
grew up with like the food pyramid and whatever else we
Yeah.
went through.
Yeah.
But I can definitely relate to the sports thing where like that's your identity, right? That's what your focus is. And you can say, yeah, like I feel heavier, I'm holding on extra weight, but I'm a football player. Like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so it's like
Yeah.
you kind of can convince yourself that that's okay, even though maybe you're not feeling 100% or like it's kind of more than you want to carry.
Yeah.
So you went right from, so when you got done football, right, you're trying to
Yeah.
figure out, okay, like I don't have football anymore. Was it an immediate like, all right, football's done, I want to lose this weight? Or was there an event or some time between that before you were like, okay, how can I drop this weight to whatever weight I want to get to?
Yeah, I think it was probably about a year in between stopping football and then getting into that. I think I always wanted to like be skinny, and I just always thought that was, again, like just my frame of mind. But then I would say about a year in, and then like I mentioned, did it, really unhealthily. I had always, eaten like pretty poor when you think of like nutritional value, but when I lost the weight, I lost it rapidly. I would say it was less than 6 months. I lost over the 100 pounds. And so when you think about how much weight's coming off and that quickly, and then I had to really kind of piece things back together from a nutrition standpoint. So, but I think for about a year from when I stopped playing football to, starting that transformation for sure.
Gotcha. And so when you realize that, maybe the way I'm losing this is not the healthiest way to do it, what did you change to make it more of like a healthy, sustainable diet?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was work with a professional. And so I started working with a registered dietitian. And so part of that was I was having digestive discomfort. I was having, again, like the rapid weight loss. And so I was like, all right, something's not right here. Let me just talk to somebody that actually knows what they were doing so they could help me kind of build a plan. On the fitness side, I always felt good to go. I was like, I know what to do. I know what lifts to do. But when it came to eating, I'm like, I don't really know. So that was the first time I was ever exposed. And this was, again, probably 13, 14 years ago that I started working with them. And that's the first time I was exposed to macros or calorie counting or anything like that, which was a great first exposure. And then it led to the other extreme where all I cared about was being as lean as possible and eating as little as possible. And then, again, it just kind of every time took a new journey. So I worked with that registered dietitian for a while and got to a much better place in terms of understanding, how much protein, carbs, fats that I needed on a routine basis. And then, started to develop meal plans. And then I ended up stopping working with that dietitian, did things on my own for a bit, got probably the leanest I ever was my entire life, but was really unhappy, like very body dysmorphia, mood swings from just like constantly under eating, constantly in a quote unquote cut or caloric deficit. And so I started working with another registered dietitian that really kind of helped me out of that. And at that point, when I met that registered dietitian, I was doing keto for a couple of years and just really eating, high amounts of protein and fat, very little carbohydrates, and it really messed up my digestive tract. So I went through a few different evolutions, but I'm always an advocate of working with somebody that knows what they're doing and, helping you kind of, get that steady plan built for yourself for sure. So.
Yeah, agreed. Having somebody that's, a professional at it or super experienced not only cuts back on the time it takes you to get to whatever that goal is, but like you said, can help you gear and do the right things and do it healthily and kind of navigate through that. Right. I mean, so you went through, all of these challenges, all these struggles, these couple dietitians, which helped you. What was the biggest thing that you learned through all of that whole process?
Yeah, in transparency, there's two big like keystones for me, and they're things that I still struggle with today, and they're probably rooted in things that are more than just nutrition. But the big thing for me is not the all or nothing mentality, and that's really hard still for me to separate. Is if I'm out having something and I have something that's quote unquote bad or I shouldn't have, it's binge eating and doing those things, and that kind of dovetails into the second part is still having lapses of like binge eating and stress eating and emotional eating. And those things are very much still a part of what I do, which are, other things of disordered eating. But I think that for me, within those two things is just, I have the discipline within myself to just kind of come back to the basics. And the basics are just like giving yourself grace, allowing yourself to work through the process and finding the things that work for you. And so, like I said, it's 13, 14 years running, and it's still something every single day that it's, you try not to let bad habits creep back into your day to day for sure. So.
Yeah, I think that's what gets lost too in things is, people see what you're doing now and they think, it's either natural or, it's something you got lucky with, and they don't realize the time that you put in, the struggles that you went through, the things that you've overcome to get where you are. And not only that, is that it's, like you said, it's still a constant struggle of things you have to deal with every day. Like, just because you get to that whatever endpoint is doesn't mean that it's over, it's done. You can just coast through things. There's still daily struggles and challenges that you have to work through.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important to highlight. And I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, for sure. Even within what we do now within Klasikfit and Classic Nutrition, I think one of the things that we try to do, and I think we do a good job of just working with the demographic that we feel we can support best. And it's really beginners and intermediate people that are, maybe they've worked with a team before and then they come in and they work with us. And for us, it's the relatability factor. And I would say even most of our trainers would tell you the same thing, that it doesn't always come natural. And it's not things that, I don't slip up and make mistakes or miss a gym session and things like that. So I think it's the realness factor with people. I think to your point, exactly. Like, you get on Instagram and you see these fitness models and things like that, and you get to see everybody's highlight reel. It's really challenging and can mess with people mentally. So it's something that I think everybody does. Everybody just being real about their journey, I think, is really important for people that are struggling, for sure. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the social media aspects, and even the internet, like, there's so many different things to do and so many different opinions. And one day eggs are good for you, the next day they're causing cancer. So it's, while the wealth of information and the speed at which you can get information is there, it also kind of muddies the water of health, fitness, nutrition, and all of that. And it's simple, right? All right, work out, eat well, right? Sleep a decent amount, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. And that's why it's important to hire somebody, going back to the professional, to help guide you through that. And so you mentioned the company. Why don't you talk a little bit about kind of how you guys got started? You mentioned demographic, like who you focused on. Dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So Lauren and I, my wife, so we both have been into fitness, athletics or not. We both have a little bit different of a background. I've shared a little bit about my background and how I've gotten into this. And so naturally fitness fit right in for me. Lauren actually has a completely different background. And so she is someone that had, been a cheerleader, gymnast, done some of those things in the past, but never really loved working out. And so for her, she finally found what that was. And that was being a cycle instructor and working. She worked with Cycle Bar and still does. And so once she found that, then she just kind of pursued, during the pandemic, she got laid off actually. And I told her at that point, I said, you should really pursue being a personal trainer. You're already a group fitness instructor. I think you'd be a natural at it. And so she has a sales and marketing background. So I think it pairs nicely too, with just being able to, build a business from an infrastructure standpoint. And so she got personal training certified. She started posting that she was taking clients, and pretty much overnight, she had 20 people right at the beginning of the COVID. And what I told her is I said, well, and this was over margaritas one night, but I was like, look, we started having a couple margaritas. I was like, look, I could tear the entire garage down. We'll tear everything out from the storage standpoint. We'll just put a gym in here. That night we went out, we started tearing things down. And so we started inviting clients over, training right out of the gym in our garage. We were training clients in their houses. Our backyard was set up. We started training them there. Then we were doing virtual. One thing really led to another. I think what sparked our growth, my background being in staffing and recruiting, we had some trainers reach out to us that saw her training on Instagram. And they were like, hey, look, are you guys hiring? Because there's really no gym jobs right now. Everything's shut down. We really just kind of took a leap of faith. We're like, sure. We hired in Pennsylvania, then we hired in New Jersey, then we hired in New York. And then, now full circle, we train in 6 states in person. We have about 45 trainers nationwide. And for us, like demographically, 90% of our training team is female, maybe 95%. And that's really because pretty quickly we realized like women's health and, that beginner intermediate is really probably 60-70% of our clientele. And so we wanted to support them the best way we could. And that's by having people that relate well to them, both physically, mentally, and then we, things, it's really kind of taken a life of its own. It's been a blast, and it's something that continues to grow, something that we continue to evolve. We've done things like we partnered with NovaCare as a continued care partner. So a lot of our team, from an education standpoint, we require an undergrad in exercise science kinesiology in tandem with their personal training certification. It helps from an anatomy and education standpoint when you start to build programs. So we work a lot with, post rehab, and then we work a lot with the geriatric community too, 55 plus. And so that's been a big growth for us now. I would say from a consumer standpoint, we continue to work with clients in their home. Virtual is less than what it used to be, which I'm much more of a fan of being in person with people. I think it's a much better experience overall. And then the secondary part of our business that's really started to grow is, especially in Florida and Texas, is working with active living communities, 55 plus, and coming in and, providing their group fitness and one-on-one training, for their facilities. So that's, fitness in a nutshell and how it's taken place. Lauren and I are still very involved. We both have some of our own personal training clients still that we work with. We do all of the sales consultations. I do all of the interviewing for trainers. So very involved in the day-to-day operations. And then Classic Nutrition, we actually have a practice manager, Sam, who runs that entire practice. We are credentialed by Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, and Blue Cross Blue Shield. So she does all of the billing, the initial assessments, consultations, and evaluations. And then she has a team of 4 registered dietitians that support her. So it's been a journey, I can tell you that.
No, that's amazing. I mean, that was 4 or 5 years ago, you said, like COVID?
Yeah. Right in the middle of COVID. Lauren started training, just, I would say, right before that, uncertified. And then once the pandemic happened, I told her, I was like, just get your certification. And then, again, one thing led to another. So it's been crazy. So.
Mm-hmm. And so you kind of jumped into that as part of COVID, right? Because she got laid off. Was she doing any kind of training with other people before?
Yeah.
She got laid off? Okay.
Yeah. So she had been at Cycle Bar for a bit, and she was just helping people on the side and getting paid. So when you're a group fitness instructor, I think people will ask you a lot, like, oh, do you train? Do you do this? And so she started helping people through that outlet. And I told her, I was like, if you're really going to do it, you need to get, the certification and really make sure you understand thoroughly how to train one-on-one. Myself, like I'd always worked with middle school athletes. So I'd always worked with middle school football players, and I've run some camps and things like that before we got started. I did a little bit of general pop, but once we got started into this is when I really, got started working with more general population, beginner, intermediate, things like that. So.
Okay, cool. And then, so does she have any kind of following on social media, like social media presence? When you said when she initially started posting,
more than I do. More than I do. She's, I'm very uninvolved. I shamefully, and it's a big part of business. Like the only time I post on social media is about my son, my wife, or football. Are really the 3 things I post. She's probably got like 1,200 followers or something like that on Instagram. So she has much more of a following. And if you go to Klasikfit, or you go mainly Klasikfit, but you'll see she's much more the face of what we do and very out and forward, which again, from a demographic that we support, I think is super important. And she does a great job with that. And being a mom and being a new mom, I think is important, especially for the prenatal and postpartum clients that we work with and things like that too. So it's very relatable, in terms of how we approach it and what she does in terms of content too. So.
Mm-hmm. And so, that's a lot of growth in a couple of years. What are some of the challenges that you guys came across, as I'm sure you did?
I'm just thankful we didn't have Declan at that time. It was a lot of 7 days a week, 12-hour days. You're really, I think we're fortunate that we had the business acumen coming into it, because I think that makes it so much easier and you're able to scale much faster. But for anyone who started a business during the pandemic, I think would relate that, it was a time that I think the consumer trends in market was very different, and we were right time, right place, right? So I think and this is so cliche, but for the people that were willing to work really, really hard during that period of time, there was a lot of opportunity for the market shifting into certain pockets. You were a part of, CrossFit generation and being in that gym and seeing, what they went through. We weren't a gym, so we went through, different challenges and struggles, but, just a lot of late nights getting it started. And then, I think the learning curve for us is when, it's one thing to hire in one state and learn what's required from a credentialing and certification process. But then when you start to get into different states and you have to learn the different nuances, whether it be payroll processes, minimum wages, workers' comp, those types of things, I think are the biggest learning curve. So, when you're getting started, I wouldn't advocate for someone to jump into multiple states right away. I would tell you to start with one and get really good with that. Because that was really what I got tasked with. And there were a lot of sleepless nights with that, because you're just worried that you're within compliance and doing things the right way. We W-2 all of our staff, so they're not 1099 contractors. So it just means that, from a liability standpoint, you shoulder that. So, we've since consulted some small businesses and helped them get up to speed, mainly with their sales and recruiting processes. Because I think for what we do, yes, it's within the fitness space, but I also think what's interesting about what we do is it's applicable to any business. Everyone has to staff, everyone has to do sales, right? So it's the same thing. It's just, that's really how we expanded quickly, is without the brick and mortar piece of it too. So.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And so as you kind of work through these legalities, going to different states and all that stuff, do you have a mentor or any kind of resource that you use to get that stuff locked down?
Great lawyer and great accountant. So they're not what you would call your standard mentor, because we do pay for their services, but I was not blessed to have a Rolodex of people that, I could count on to be like, yeah, what did you do with this? I don't have that big of a network to do that. So when we got into this, we actually met with several different accountants, and we met with several different lawyers. The lawyer was extremely helpful, because I knew I needed somebody, not from inception, I would say probably about a year in. I needed a lawyer that could understand multi-state law and knew at least from the Northeast and could learn with us. So Chris is our lawyer, and he's phenomenal. He's here local in Pennsylvania, and he's helped us both personally and professionally, which has been great. And he's consulted us every step of the way. And then our accountant is important, from things that you don't even know that you're going to need, different entity setup, in different states. Just setting up your accounting and back end processes to make sure everything's within compliance, filing your taxes. If you need sales tax, different states have different guidelines when it comes to personal training and having those things. So no business mentor, but phenomenal people in our professional corner that have helped quite a bit, for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so, you mentioned, I don't have a big Rolodex of network of people that I can reach out to. How do you find these two, key people?
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of Google searching, and I think it's tough too. When you start your first business, you don't know what you don't know. So you start interviewing people. And so I started talking first to lawyers, because I was handling the accounting side of it myself. We were still small enough in the beginning that I could do the bookkeeping and make sure and provide, an accountant with the documents. So when I started meeting with lawyers first, I just went in with some open-ended questions. And really what I was looking for is somebody that was more of a personality match than I was necessarily all the skills, because I needed somebody that I felt comfortable talking to and asking the stupid questions, because I had a lot of them. And it was, it was just like, I have no idea what I'm doing, help me out. And so that was important for me. And I think that's always been my, kind of my guiding principle. Even when I interview trainers, I look more for personality fit and potential than I do just for what right now, because I think it's, you can work with somebody that's, much more like open-minded and has, great energy, great personality. So once I found him, that the second part became easier because now I was opened up to his Rolodex, and now I'm working off of referrals from people he's worked with in the past. And so I think that's the biggest thing that's the other thing I would add is that he mentioned right from the very get-go, he was a connector, and he's somebody that believes in connecting people with the right people to help them grow. And so immediately he was connecting us with, different people and vendors that we use still to this day from, pretty much day one. So that's our process and what we did. And that I probably talked to 5 different lawyers before we came to that decision. So.
Yeah. And I like what you said about like, once you found the right person, now you have their network as well. And like, that's that, that exponential growth, that, chain reaction of the web of people where it's like, all right, I met this person and now you're open up to his network. You meet a different supplier. All right, now you got their network. So it's like, if you find the right person, chances are they also know people who are like them. And if you were attracted to them as a person, you're going to likely like their network as well.
Yep, 3,000%. And it definitely worked in our favor. So, yeah.
Awesome. And so, talking about getting started in the beginning, like, you mentioned you got, I think it's important to acknowledge what you mentioned earlier was that things, right place, right time, you were able to kind of recognize the shift in the market during COVID. I think it's one thing to just recognize it, but it's another thing to do what you guys did, whether or not it took margaritas or not, but you're like, let's just do it. Right. Like, it was just like, all right, well, like now's the time to do it. Let's dive into it.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest hurdle that people run into is like the time from thinking about doing something to doing it and shortening that.
Right.
Was it the margaritas that kind of was like giving you confidence to jump into it? Or was there kind of some other spark or thing that was like, let's do it. I feel confident that we can get this done.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's funny because if you talk to Lauren, and she would tell you she was so tired of me coming home every day and say, we got to do something for ourselves. Like, what about this? What about that? I constantly had a new idea. I just knew that I felt that we were strong enough in our work ethic and skills, from recruiting, sales, marketing. Those are very basic core concepts of just about any business. And so I right before we started Klasikfit and the pandemic happened, we had actually started working with a local rep that would do franchise placement. And so we went through and we surveyed, I don't know, probably 10 to 15 different franchises, all different businesses. But the one that really stuck out to us was more like a health and wellness opportunity. So I would say, yes, the margaritas helped, but I think it was the really leading up to that's really was my mentality. And I think it made it easier for Lauren when she got laid off, that I had been pushing that for so long, that it was like, that was it. That was the trigger. We just needed that one extra thing, the domino to kind of fall in place. And that was it. And so I think it was just the constant, like, I know we can do this, and kind of breathing confidence into it. And then in the moment when you get laid off and it's like, okay, like, what, your back's against the wall, what's next? And it's like, all right, well, let's do it. So.
Yeah, it's I love that. It's like, you can have all these ideas and, now you found the right time, right? It's kind of been festering. You kind of been thinking about it, been considering it. So it certainly helps to have those ideas and the thoughts and kind of prepare for it before you either get fired, which obviously you have no control over, or to make that leap, right? I think it's fun to say, like, let's burn the boats, let's quit the W-2 and jump right into this without really having any initial groundwork done. And so I love that you guys are kind of like, nothing really happened. You kind of just like worked on it in the background, and then like the opportunity came. It's like, well, we've been working on it. Like, let's dive full, 2 feet first.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there is no right time per se, but I think for us, it made the most sense at that moment. And, I think, when you look at our business model too, and this is something that I would encourage anybody who's like really stuck on, wants to be an entrepreneur and doesn't know what to do. I think you look at your current skill set and look to see if there's something that you can get into with low entry to barrier, right? Like, can I do something with my skills that pays us, that I don't have to like necessarily carry all this overhead with? And then you just start to compound on top of that. And I for us, it was a huge blessing, and it still is, that we're able to keep overhead so low. And ultimately the business, sure, we could downsize, and we have some salary employees that I would never want or wish to lose, but we could ultimately go back to training tomorrow full time. Right. So it's something that, you know, I think is huge, and helped in our situation for sure. So.
Yeah, for sure. So, you and your wife started this. You have a son now with another one on the way.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How do you balance like the coworker / co-founder, husband, wife, father, mother balance? Like, how do you work through all that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of pain points throughout, and it's tough because we're both just as equally ambitious about what we want to do. But I think I think you just have to, with anything, you have to prioritize. And I would be remiss to say that I wouldn't say that company growth is at the number one threshold anymore. I think since having Declan, I think it's like, okay, we understand from, you know, at priority one is we're in growing our family mode. And for us, that means we want to be as present and in their lives as possible. And I think it's really important for us both to be great parents. And I think, you know, you take that same ambition you have for growing business to growing your family. I think it's all the same mold in your identity. So I would say for us, like we carry that first, right? So priority one is growing family and taking care of family. So anytime we start to think about what's going to happen, how are we delegating tasks, what's our schedules look like, it's always what does the family need first. And then second, we start to look at the business, and we start to look at what our day-to-day is, and who at the moment has the most important tasks to accomplish, and that's who's, you know, not working, right? So I think for right now, we've gotten the business to a point where Lauren is active but gets to play a little bit lesser of a face role, so that she can focus on, you know, Declan doesn't go to daycare, which is a choice that we made. And it's not easy to do, because that includes, you know, sometimes I'm working, I jump off a call, I'm going to watch Declan for a couple hours while she works, and vice versa. So I think you have to have a true partner in your spouse to make that work. And so, you know, I'm fortunate that we're able to make that happen. But you know, so I think we just go with that guiding principle that you have to know what's priority A and priority B. And that was not an easy shift in the very beginning. When Lauren got pregnant the first time, you don't have a toddler to take care of. So it's like, I can still work and I'm pregnant. And then it's like, all right, if I need a nap, I go take a nap and come back to it. Now it's not the case. You've got a toddler to take care of. She's pregnant. She's putting in some work. And then, you know, she's trying to help take care of the house and things like that. So, you know, again, you have to set your priorities, and there's no perfect day. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, all right, we're just going to do our best. You know, and we'll get back to, you know, company growth is number one or 1A at some point. I don't know that it'll ever be number one in comparison to our kids, but it'll, you know, certainly get back to 1A, where we have more time. They're in school. They're doing their things. They have their hobbies, and we can both invest, you know, full-time hours into this at all times. You know, I think, you know, we'll get back to that for sure. So.
Yeah, and that's the advantage of, you know, having your own business, is that, you know, you can make it whatever you want, right? You're not making money for somebody else. You're not a slave to their time clock and, you know, hours you need to be there, days you could have to request off. Like, that's the beauty of it. It's like, okay, we can pause on growth mode. Like, how would we get sustain mode? Because I want to focus on this different part of my life because I'm in a new phase, right? It's just like the gym, right? Like I went through a phase when I was in my 20s where it was like, let's compete. Like, how much can I lift? Like, how much can I push myself? And now it's like, yeah, I want to push myself, but for the most part, I just want to be healthy and move. And so I'll go to the gym, and maybe it's not 100% day, and that's totally cool. Like, it's just, I'm maintaining that portion of my life while I focus on how can I be more present for my family? How can I help provide for my family? And I love that you guys are recognizing that and prioritizing it. I think that's super important for anybody listening to remember, is like, it's okay to not want to have this massive business that makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year, right? Like, yeah, that might be great because you can get your yacht, you can do whatever you want, but like, are you willing to sacrifice what needs to be sacrificed now to get that? And maybe that's not worth it. And that's completely okay. I mean, you guys if you're happy and you're prioritizing what you need to prioritize, that be happy with, that's what matters.
Yep, that's huge. I think you're exactly right, and I think that's the right word. Is what at each stage what we've realized as the company's grown is like there's a level of sacrifice that has to be given to get to the next point and the next point and the next point. And I think at one point you decide like what's worth it to you, what sacrifices are you willing to make, and we just said like for now we know giving X will provide X return, and we're happy with that return while we get to do the things that we enjoy. And that's important, and it all matters to us. Like Klasikfit and Classic Nutrition, and our teams are they're like family. We had a housewarming party. They were here. We consider those people super close and love them to death. And so they also know where we're at in life too. And they know what, that looks like for them in terms of opportunity, and the people that are, the regional manager that we have or the practice manager that we have too. And so yeah, I 100% sacrifice is the right phrase for it for sure. So.
Perfect. And you mentioned your team, and they're aware of everything that's going on, what your focus is, and obviously you care about them, right? When you're interviewing for accountants and lawyers, you were looking for like a vibe check of does this fit value wise. Yeah. Now, can you have experience in staffing, maybe somebody who's not as familiar with hiring people or staffing anything, like what do you recommend somebody who's looking to maybe make their first hire or kind of build a team? Like how can they do that more effectively so they don't have a high turnover, or maybe hire the wrong person, or try their best to not hire the wrong person?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it starts with like setting up the position that you're hiring for. And I think you need to be transparent of what that position is going to look like for the person coming in. What I mean by that is, especially when you're making your first hire, that person coming in is most likely not going to just be an account manager. It's going to be like, you may give them an account manager title, but they're going to be doing everything. This person might be helping payroll. They might you just never know. And in a small business, you wear a lot of hats. So I think that you just need to have a firm understanding of that. I think you need to know going in when you post a requisition and you start talking to candidates. I think you need to know, and then just being open and honest with them as you can throughout the process. And I think just as you start to break that wall between you and like being a business and hiring this person as an employee, I think especially person one needs to be your right hand. And so I think letting them in a little bit, being a little bit more vulnerable with them, talking to them about the specifics, you don't have to be so covert about everything that you're doing, and you don't have to hide things from them. We were financially transparent with people that we brought on in the very beginning, so they knew exactly why we made the decisions that we did. But I think as you're talking to people, it's just like the way I viewed it is, in the way that I still do, is when I'm talking to people in an interview, is I view it as this is a potential friend and someone I'm going to do a lot of work with, and we're going to be side by side. So if I can't communicate and feel good about the conversation we're having, and that isn't just work, I'm trying to break that wall with them and see if they'll kind of break a little and give me some of like who they actually are, and not just the professional version of it. And the people that broke and gave me, that back, and I felt like, they're like a friend and someone I could trust. I think that's what you're looking for, people you can trust, especially when you hire that first person. And it's hard to do in an interview, but that's what you have to get. That's what you get better and better at. It's like judge a character. Like, what is this person about? And you typically know. I think we all know when we talk to somebody that we're like, you leave someone and you're like, that energy was just like, I want to be around that person 24/7. And then you talk to other people and you're like, man, I hope I never talk to that guy again. Like, like that happens to all of us. And that's like, even if your wife drags you to a function and you're talking to people and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to talk to Zach. I don't want to talk to that guy again. Like, please don't. Is he going to be there? Like, so that's 100%. And everyone's personality is different. Lauren will do some interviewing and she'll tell you different. Lauren's more professional in how she interviews, but if I were talking to anybody, I would tell you, like, you want to talk to people that you can, build trust with really quickly. So.
Yeah, I love that. Like you mentioned wanting to be friends with them. Like I think that's good, right? Like you can teach them anything that you need to, right? If they're willing to work hard, like the skills can be learned, but the personality, that's not something that's really going to change, or at least not significantly enough. So it's like you said, it's like, I don't really care if I ever see or talk to that person again. It's like, it doesn't matter how good they are at their job or what they do, because it's like, I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm not going to be able to open up. I'm not going to feel like I'm going to be able to work with them. So it doesn't matter. But it's like, all right, maybe you don't have the skills now, but like, you're a hard worker. I enjoy being with you. You're open with me. You ask all of the dumb questions, which is totally cool. That's what I want. So like, I think I love that you highlighted that aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it served me really well. We've had so many like amazing people walk through Klasikfit and Classic Nutrition, and people that were with us for 2 years or 3 years and are doing something else. And I still talk to them to this day. They're still people that, I love and care for. And I think, we've got people that are musicians now, or artists, or, they moved into like more of their acting career. Like, you really just would be shocked at like some of the things that people do on the side. And I always cared about what they were doing on the side. I always, one of our guys in New York, like Jason, he was with us for 2.5, 3 years in Brooklyn, New York, and amazing trainer. But I knew from day one, he's like, I really care about my music. And, every time he dropped a new album or something, I was sharing it all over, social, like amazing guy, and still close to him to this day. So, and that all started in the very beginning of the interviewing process. And I knew right away what he was truly passionate about. And I was fine with that. I was hiring him as a personal trainer, knowing that passion A was music and passion B was personal training, but I knew he was a phenomenal trainer. So, and it just worked really well. And it came across to his clients too. And he actually had more referral clients than we've ever had in the entire time. So it was fantastic. So.
Yeah, and you're not the first person that I've talked to that has a successful business that have like, hey, yeah, we've had people come in. There was another real estate person who, he was a sales, acquisitions manager or whatever, and he was like, oh yeah, he came, he worked with us for a year or two, and he left, but like, we're still great friends. I still talk to them all the time. Like, he opened up his own shop, the same thing that we're doing now. We work together now, and we share deals together now. So it's like, that, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, this isn't just a transactional relationship. Like, yes, I'm paying you to do a job and for you to do it well, but I care about you as a person. And that goes a long way for saying who you are as a person, who the company is as a person, and is mutually beneficial to both parties.
100%. Yep. I couldn't agree more. I think it's the best relationships. It's where you want to be when you talk to people, for sure.
So you mentioned earlier that, your new sector you're kind of working into is like that assisted living or 55 plus communities. Is that where you're looking to, grow? I know you said family is priority. Like, where's the business going, from here?
Yeah. So I think when you think about what pays the bills, the bread and butter is still that in-home personal training and working with clients. That's not going anywhere. So that still is a priority that can't go anywhere. And so our focus on a day-to-day basis is really that. And then what we've grown into, and been fortunate enough to gain some accounts and start working with some different property management companies, and is that 55 plus community. If you look at it, right, you're seeing all if you look at the numbers for retirees and what that looks like, and then you start to break it apart, and then you look at Florida. A lot of people retire to Florida, right? It's the haven of retirement down there, and why not? It's great weather and a lot of demographically aged people that's appropriate. So you're starting to see a lot of 55 plus communities pop up. I think strategically that is going to be a big part of our growth. We have already seen from year over year, we've grown exponentially from like what we would call corporate clients. So you're 55 plus, we work with some resorts, we work with some country clubs, but 55 plus property management companies, too, they're, I'm trying to think of the Promenade, both in King of Prussia and in Fort Washington here locally in Pennsylvania. Those types of communities are popping up. I think you're going to see more and more of those micro communities because of, housing prices, rent, et cetera. So it all kind of ties into what you believe in the real estate sector and what's going to happen with that, with more people renting versus buying, and things like that. So for our business, the more people who are renting into these communities, micro communities, you start to look at the amenities they provide, from like gyms, group fitness, personal training, water aerobics, et cetera. So yes. To answer your question in short, that is 100% where our time and attention, rather to attending conventions, doing meet and greets with these facilities, those types of things for sure.
I think that's super smart. Like you said, people that are renting, maybe they can't afford a house or whatever, if they're between two places, whether it's the promenade or like the 555 flats that are right local to us or to me, if it's the same price, but this one comes with a gym membership, that has like at the first floor, it has a little community gym there that one of your trainers leads or whatever. Like, I'm going to probably pick that one. All I have to do is go downstairs and there's group classes. Like, count me in. Like, anywhere I can save money, I'm absolutely going to do it. So I think that's super smart because I agree. I think that's where a lot of things are going. As people rent more, right? Housing shortage is real. So like, we're going to build high-rise apartments to kind of fix this shortage, even condos, like any kind of complex. I think that's super smart with what you guys are doing.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, it's great too. And also strategically from a recruitment perspective, rather than having to send a trainer to multiple homes within a, certain geographic region. Now, we can send them to one community, they're working, they get to build a relationship. And so we offer, one-on-one training, et cetera. So it's great. I do love it. It has its own challenges, right? It's different. You basically serve two clients. You're serving the client that is the resident manager, and then you're serving the clients themselves. And so you don't want to upset one or the other. So you have two bosses now in that situation versus, you're working with a client one-on-one. But yeah, I definitely think that's a tick upward for us, in comparison. And I think work from home lifestyle also will impact our business on the consumer side. The more companies demand for people to come back into the office, I think that's where you'll start to see gym revenues start to come back up because, I'm already out, I'm commuting, like I can stop at this gym on the way home versus during the pandemic when we exploded, it was, we're working from home. I don't want to commute to a gym or they're shut down, et cetera. So I think we're just trying to stay on top of what the market's doing to the best of our ability. If I could predict what the market's going to do, I'd be rich beyond imagine. So, but yeah, you just try to stay on top of what's happening and see what's going to be best for your business. So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, even people going back to the office, right? I mean, if kind of similar to the housing or the apartment complex, like, is there a gym space in that office where now I can go to the gym space within that, maybe that company's providing a workout area there. Like, hey, company, can I come in and, during the lunch hour, we have showers, so no worries. Like, can we come in? I'll have a trainer come in and that's just once a day. All your employees come and work out or whoever wants to. Like, that amenity is something like, sounds like what you're mentioning is people kind of have to go back to the office, which is where things are going.
100%. Yeah. And we actually worked with the company CareSource out of Ohio, and they had a massive gym facility at their office. And like, they wanted to incentivize their employees to use it. And so we had trainers in there, we had group fitness instructors. So yeah, there's still plenty of opportunity. It's just, you have to shift what type of business you're going after. And so I think it's helpful that Lauren has that gym experience, but I think the business acumen and talking to professionals too, from a sales standpoint, you're working with two different types of people when you're talking consumer versus corporate. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I think it'll be extremely positive. I do think it'll be a shift, and where we've seen consumer revenue come down, we've seen corporate revenue go up. And so you have to be mindful of that. And I think that goes back to evolving as a business, because you can't stay stagnant and not evolve and consider, what the market's handing you. And if you do, that's when, ultimately you can go out of business. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I love that. Things change so quickly that like, you got to have a finger on the pulse, whether or not you're trying to actively grow or not. It's like, I still need to know what's happening. So I love that. Super important. So somebody wants to work with you. What's the best way to get in contact with you guys and begin that relationship?
Yeah. So the best way is to go to klasikfit.com. And when you head to klasikfit.com, you'll see Get Started. And so the first thing you'll do is meet with myself or Lauren and do a initial consultation. And it's really a 30-minute get to know you. We meet with you over Google Meets, and we spend some time exploring the Klasikfit app. We talk about program pricing and ultimately what we think is going to be the best fit and make a recommendation. So, from there, we'll talk about, pairing and things, but yeah, heading to klasikfit.com is the best place to start for sure.
Perfect. I love it, man. Well, this has been great. I definitely want to have you back on. There's a bunch of notes that I wrote that I think we could revisit on down the road. This is super great. I have a lot of business side. I think we can dive into more of the fitness side stuff too down the road. But man, I appreciate you coming on. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, man. It's been a blast. So anytime.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So I will include all Jerry's information, Klasikfit information in the show notes. But I appreciate everybody listening, and have a great rest of your day.